On the 22nd of April 2025, HMS Prince of Wales departed Portsmouth Harbour from Princess Royal Jetty, beginning her 8-month Operation High Mast deployment. The 65,000-ton carrier was joined by her escorts as she headed into the Solent, starting a 26,000 nautical mile mission that would take the carrier strike group across multiple regions and involve exercises with allied nations. The Ministry of Defence framed it as the most ambitious British carrier deployment since HMS Prince of Wales' maiden 2021 deployment. But the circumstances were very different. The world in 2025 is sharper edge, less stable, and far more contested. Now that the group has returned home, we can look at what was actually achieved, what gaps were exposed, and what this 26,000-mile journey tells us about the future of the Royal Navy. For all the attention the carrier attracts, the ships that sail around with her tell their own story. For High Mast, the UK provided just 2 surface escorts, HMS Dauntless, a Type 45 destroyer serving as the air defence shield, and HMS Richmond, a veteran Type 23 frigate, upgraded to act as the anti-submarine warfare ship in the task group. Dauntless's Samson radar remains one of the most capable sensors afloat, able to track tiny objects at extreme speed. HMS Richmond, although aging, still punches above her weight thanks to her sonar suite and renewed data integration. Supporting them was the fleet tanker RFA Tide Force, providing fuel, stores, an unglamorous but utterly vital logistics backbone. And that was it from the British escort group. For a modern carrier strike group operating in contested environments, it was a very lean screen. The Royal Navy has been open about the reason. Its surface fleet is at a generational low point. Older frigates are retiring faster before new platforms are being commissioned, creating a widening capability gap. But Operation High Mast didn't hide this. Allies filled the gaps. The Norwegian frigate Roald Amundsen fully integrated into the protective screen for key phases, and later in the deployment, the Italian FREM Luigi Rizzo slotted in. Critics often frame this reliance on Allied escorts as a sign of national decline, but Operation High Mast demonstrated the reality of modern NATO operations. Britain provided the carrier and air wing, the punch, Allies to help form the shield. The deployment didn't just showcase cooperation, it depended upon it. After sharpening its teeth under NATO command during Operation Neptune Strike, the group sailed through the Suez Canal in late May. The Red Sea leg demanded constant vigilance. This is one of the most heavily monitored maritime zones on Earth, with missile and drone threats never far from view. Once in the Indian Ocean, the main effort of Operation High Mast truly began. On the 23rd of June, HMS Prince of Wales arrived in Singapore. In a break from the usual approach, she didn't berth quietly at a naval facility. Instead, she tied up at the Marina Bay Cruise Centre, right in the heart of the city. The imagery was dramatic, a British carrier against the backdrop of Singapore's skyline, an unmistakable message of presence and partnership. While the carrier hosted engagements at diplomatic events, HMS Richmond and RFA Tide Force slipped into Changi Naval Base to resupply and conduct essential maintenance. While docked in the very waters her predecessor departed 80 years ago, the crew of the modern HMS Prince of Wales held a solemn ceremony to honour the battleship and the men of Force Z, who were lost defending Singapore in 1941. From Singapore, the group moved south to Australia for Exercise Talisman Sabre, one of the largest and most complex military exercises in the region. This wasn't a simple meet and greet. British F-35Bs data linked seamlessly with Australian E-7 Wedgetails and operated alongside US Navy Super Hornets. Anti-submarine warfare trials, strike missions, amphibious support operations all tested the carrier group at high intensity. The key takeaway was flexibility. The Royal Navy demonstrated that its carrier air wing can plug directly into American and Australian command networks as if it were a native part of the architecture. It's an ability that very few nations possess, and it reinforces Britain's relevance in the Indo-Pacific region. After the high-tempo operations, the group called at Darwin, part rest, part logistical reset, before turning north towards Japan. Arriving in Japan in early August, the carrier group participated in arguably the most technically significant moment of the entire deployment. On the 8th of August, British F-35Bs performed flight operations on the deck of the Japanese very carrier-light destroyer Kaga. This evolution marked the first time British jets had ever operated from a Japanese warship, and it validated the concept of cross-decking between the two nations. In a future conflict, a British jet could strike a target, divert due to damage or low fuel, and land safely on a Japanese vessel, or vice versa. For any adversary attempting to disrupt Allied air operations, this kind of interoperability creates an enormous tactical headache. After the cross-deck trials, HMS Prince of Wales hosted the Future Pacific Forum at Tokyo's cruise terminal, drawing political and military leaders from across the region. Meanwhile, HMS Richmond and RFA Tide Force detached to South Korea, visiting Busan before rejoining the group for air defense drills with the Republic of Korea Navy. While HMS Prince of Wales didn't berth in Korea herself, she operated alongside Korean forces off the coast in a series of exercises that underlines Britain's willingness to integrate into region-wide security efforts. As the carrier group turned westwards towards home, there was another major engagement on the calendar, Exercise Falcon, and with it, one of the most intriguing carrier images of recent years. From the 5th to the 8th of October, HMS Prince of Wales sailed in a rare dual carrier formation with the Indian Navy's INS Vikrant, India's first domestically built aircraft carrier. For naval historians, the symbolism is striking. A century ago, British warships dominated these waters. Today, the Royal Navy returns as a partner, not a patron, to a rapidly rising maritime power. The exercise involved air drills, close manoeuvring, and cross-force command coordination. For India, it was an opportunity to test its carrier aviation alongside an established NATO carrier. For Britain, it was a chance to deepen ties with a nation that increasingly views the Indian Ocean as the primary area of strategic competition. After the exercise, the group split temporarily for port visits. HMS Prince of Wales in Goa, HMS Richmond in Mumbai. These may seem like ceremonial events, but in the Indo-Pacific, relationship building at a personal level is a strategic asset. By early November, the long loop of Operation High Mast had brought the group back to familiar European waters. After a brief stop in Crete, the carrier group participated in Exercise Falcon Strike, the major final act of the deployment. If the Indo-Pacific phase emphasized diplomacy and partnership, Falcon Strike emphasized raw combat power. For this exercise, the Royal Navy surged the carrier air wing to 24 F-35Bs, the largest number ever embarked on a British carrier, and the most fifth-generation fighters assembled at sea by any European nation. But beyond the political demonstration, this wasn't just about numbers, it was integration. The Italian carrier ITS Cavour sailed with HMS Prince of Wales, and for the first time in European carrier history, jets regularly cross-operated between the two decks. British F-35s operated from Cavour, and Italian jets operated from HMS Prince of Wales. Maintenance crews, mission planners, and pilots swapped between ships as if they were part of the same navy. This marks a definitive resurgence in European maritime capability. Europe doesn't have small, separate carrier forces. It's beginning to build one combined, mutually supporting capability. In a crisis, if a British or Italian ship were damaged, the air wing could continue operations from the other nation's carrier. On the 28th of November 2025, Portsmouth came into view, marking the end of the 8-month, 26,000 nautical mile deployment. Across the Carrier Strike Group, 4,000 personnel had flown over 1,200 F-35B sorties, conducted more than 500 air defence and anti-submarine drills, and fired dozens of missiles during high-end exercises. The group also called at over 10 ports across 3 continents, integrating with Allied navies at every stage. These numbers don't just show scale, they highlight the coordination, endurance, and commitment required to keep a modern carrier strike group at full operational readiness over such a long deployment. So, what does Operation High Mast ultimately tell us? First, it proves beyond doubt that Britain can deploy a fully operational carrier strike group on a global scale. The F-35B surge demonstrated a level of air power few nations can match. Cross-decking with Japan and Italy showed deep, real-world interoperability. Engagements with Australia, India, and Korea highlighted Britain's relevance in the Indo-Pacific region. And the dual carrier operations with Vikrant added a layer of strategic symbolism that shouldn't be underestimated. But the deployment also exposed the lack of supporting ships. The Royal Navy can field 2 world-class carriers and at least 1 air wing, but the escort force protecting it is stretched thin. Without Allied participation, the group would have been exposed during several legs of the journey. Multinational operations are clearly the future, but reliance on them is increasingly unavoidable. And then there's the future direction of British defence policy. With the 2025 Strategic Defence Review shifting towards unmanned systems and reinforcing home water security, we have to ask whether Operation High Mast represents a final flourish of the global Britain era. Will we see another 8-month deployment like this in the near future? Or will the carriers lean towards Euro-Atlantic operations aimed at countering Russia? What Operation High Mast has proven is that the capability exists. The challenge now is deciding how and where to use it. So over to you. Is a global carrier presence still vital for British influence, or should the Royal Navy focus its limited resources closer to home in the North Atlantic and European waters? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.